your habit brain is going to tell you everything under the sun to get you to stop it right now, it's trying to protect you, and change is the habit brain's arch nemesis. So, this is a great time to remind yourself to tell your brain, thank you. I know you're trying to keep me safe, but you are not the best objective judge of the situation right now. We're going to do this new thing and we're going to survive. Welcome to the Foster Your Voice podcast with me, Christy Foster. After a 30-year career in music and theater, I never imagined I'd be coaching trial attorneys. But once I entered your world, I quickly realized how critical and underutilized voice is in the courtroom. The truth is, you don't win trials with brute strength. You win with your voice. I'll give you tools to unlock your voice so you can communicate not just with purpose, but on purpose. If you want quick action tips to help you stay calm and in control, keep jurors engaged, and inspire your listeners to action, all through the power of your voice, you're in the right place. I'm Christy Foster, and I'm here to help you foster your voice. Hello. Welcome back to the Foster Your Voice podcast. Just by listening here today, you are part of the Foster fam. I want this to be a kind, nurturing, and fun place to learn and grow, particularly in your voice and in your courtroom communication skills. If you haven't already, please share this podcast and leave a star rating and a review so we can invite others in the fam as well. Before we dig into the second part of our discussion about the 5 foundational truths of voice and communication, I had to tell you about this really curious conversation I overheard. Well, overheard, that's a loose interpretation. There was a video that came across my Facebook feed, but it didn't feel like a regular reel and it didn't seem to be advertising anything. It was a short snippet of a conversation between what appeared to be coworkers in a casual company meeting. It was at Cat Cloud Coffee from Santa Cruz, California, I think. And here's what they were discussing. One guy was saying that if you start a conversation, especially if you are a service-based industry, with a question like, "Hey, how you doing?" or "What's going on?" while it might seem like just a pleasantry, you actually have already put them in a position of having to give to you. You are already taking from them when they came into your store or business to receive. Isn't that an interesting twist? I had never thought about it that way, but I kind of agree with it. He goes on to challenge that when guests are coming in, they don't want to be put in a position of having to answer. And though he didn't say this plainly, it does kind of also make me think about the question to begin with. Am I really just asking it so that I can be set at ease? I mean, how often do we really want the real answer to that question? And is the person we're asking ready to divulge the answer with the full backing of their vulnerability and honesty? Probably not. So then it just becomes this meaningless exchange, doesn't it? Instead, he said that he'd rather hear, "Hey, it's good to see you," and then be able to start a conversation from a place of giving rather than trying to take right off the bat. It's subtle, isn't it? But it's a significant shift, to me at least. Now, his coworkers or employees, I couldn't exactly tell. They didn't all seem to be in agreement with him. They were saying that, well, that's just when you read the room and you don't impose your energy on someone else, which, okay, I definitely see that too, and that perspective gives value. I just thought it was a really interesting way to look at the beginning of human exchanges, especially when you are in a service industry or even, I would argue, in a courtroom situation. I mean, the system is already taking so much from jurors. What would it look like if you came from a position of giving to them? So he closes by saying, always be giving, rarely be taking. Isn't that interesting? I'm definitely going to be paying closer attention when I go into some place when I'm expecting hospitality and how their opening line either gives or takes from me. But I'm also going to pay attention to how I give or take from people I encounter. Interesting. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Send me an email, info@fostervoicestudio.com, or send me a DM on Facebook or Instagram. Let me know if you agree or disagree with him. Interesting. You know what I hate? Being misunderstood. It's actually one of my biggest fears, if I'm honest, right up there with birds. Yes, I'm afraid of birds. Leave me alone about it already. Being misunderstood is just the worst, though. Trying to communicate something and seeing that it's just not landing the way you intend. A too harsh of tone with your kid or spouse that ended up setting them off. A thinking face that got interpreted as annoyance or irritation and ended up shutting down the conversation and leaving you baffled. It's so frustrating in our personal lives, but in the courtroom, your mismatched communication profile could break your case and lose you a deserving verdict. So, I've created a free guide to get you thinking about the emotional profiles you create. It's a printable guide to help you 10x your communication impact by mastering 6 emotional profiles for clear and authentic connection. I break down the 6 core emotions: happy, sad, love, pride, anger, and fear by giving you face, body, and breathing cues. Plus, I show you exactly which point on a 1 to 10 scale you should be with your pitch, pace, melody, volume, and tone in order to authentically capture the center of that core emotion. The link to get your free guide is in the show notes or by simply going to my website, fostervoicestudio.com. Don't wait to clear up your part of miscommunication and misunderstandings. Get your free download today. So, this is the second part of my list of 5 fundamental truths that I apply to vocal development and how I approach vocal coaching. If you missed last week's episode, just pause this one. I'm not going anywhere. Go back to episode 5 and get those first 2 truths. If you're current, though, let's go ahead and forge ahead. Quick review. Truth number 1, your voice is an instrument. It has unique properties that other instruments don't have, like the fact that it's cellular, organic, constantly in flux. But if you treat it like an instrument, you can do new things with it. You can create new communication habits that will shape your sound and your presentational style. Truth number 2, added to that with the reminder that external listening is better than internal hearing. You are the only one that has that 3-pronged approach. So it's hard to be objective about your voice right now. You need someone, or at the very least, have a dedicated external source like a recording that can give an honest assessment and help you recalibrate your internal definitions so that you can be objective and make purposeful choices. Today, then, we dive into truth number 3, and that is, we learn best in low-stakes situations. You are a high-stakes communicator. There's a lot on the line. There's elevated stress. I mean, even just the formality of the courthouse building and what you're wearing. I mean, everything is elevated, right? Plus, you have people, total strangers, that you're trying to build permission with and equip them to be able to work as a group and make thoughtful decisions that connect to their principles that they live their lives by. So, yeah, high stakes. But the transformation of your voice building the new communication habits that will shape your communication style and your leadership presence, that will happen in low stakes situations. For quite an extended season of my life and music career, I was regularly singing with worship bands, both on the road and then also singing a lot in local churches. Now, I rarely knew the songs ahead of time. I'd show up and maybe we'd have a chance to run through some things to get levels or work out transitions, but we weren't doing full rehearsals and woodshedding of parts. There was a lot of learning from the bandstand and, to put it in your terms, trial by fire. For me, in that moment, that was high stakes for my field. So here's the thing. Even though I was doing temporary learning on the front lines of a high stakes situation, I was confident I could do it because of all the long term, detailed work I'd done in the low stakes situations. I put in the work in practice rooms, sitting at my piano, singing in choirs, singing in the car, rocking harmonies with my sister. I did all the transformative work already, so I could just show up and be my most rock steady self with the band. For you, as a high stakes communicator, you have to try things in front of people that have no prior knowledge of your voice or personality or how you usually express yourself. You have to try using more of your middle voice and tapping into your head voice when you order coffee or go through the drive-through. You have to practice keeping your elbows away from your body and knowing where your hands are going to rest when standing in line at the grocery store or while pumping your gas at the gas station. Sure, it's going to feel really weird to you, but remember, it's just an unexplored behavior that is new to you. You're going to think you sound and look exaggerated and strange. Your habit brain is going to tell you everything under the sun to get you to stop it right now, you. It's trying to protect you, and change is the habit brain's arch nemesis. So, this is a great time to remind yourself to tell your brain, thank you. I know you're trying to keep me safe, but you are not the best objective judge of the situation right now. We're going to do this new thing and we're going to survive. The total strangers that you're likely to never see again because they don't know you, because they don't know how you normally stand, gesture, or sound, they won't react when you change something. When you practice popping up into your middle or head voice, when you explore volume, when you change your tone, they won't care and they won't react because they have no other frame of reference. It's when you bank enough of these neutral exchanges, when you've tried things in low stakes scenarios and then practice them again, that's when you start to trust that this new range is safe and okay. There's value in learning on the bandstand or jumping into the fire, but long-term skill acquisition happens over time with a growing, steady safety around that change. Now, truth number 4 builds on understanding the value of low stakes learning. And here it is. Subtle is sufficient. Eventually. So subtle is sufficient, but there's a caveat. In the courtroom, you're not trying to put on a Broadway play. While it's a bigger space than your office, it's not a theater space, and you're not trying to be a great actor or do caricatures of people. You're trying to project authentic, real person communication. The variety and range to your pitch, to your pacing, melody, volume, and tone. Well, these are all locked in so that you can make nuanced changes. For example, in your storytelling, you are the narrator. This is your slightly elevated, normal voice. Engaging, interesting, purposeful, clear. Great. But then you introduce new characters and start doing dialogue portions. You need to change your voice and your body, not in over the top melodramatic ways, but in ways that let your jurors know you're playing somebody else and giving them a new perspective, a new lens to take in the story from. So, this is my normal narrator voice. But then, when I want to introduce maybe a younger, more vulnerable character, perhaps female, I'm going to have a lighter, more head voice mix, a little more breath, and a little softer, smaller body position. If this is how I talked and held myself all the time, and you didn't know me already, you wouldn't think twice about it. But this is my actual voice. This is my narrator voice. So then, when I want to introduce a stronger, more dominant, or a belligerent character, and just for contrast, let's make them a male, you can hear how I've shifted to a darker, lower, edgier tone. I've made my body bigger. Again, if this is just how I usually talked and stood, if you didn't have any other frame of reference for me, you wouldn't bat an eye. But this is actually my narrator voice. This is my true voice. Now, all the voices still sound like me. I didn't stray too far away from my true voice. I didn't create characters to act out. I just made subtle changes, and those nuanced changes away from the narrator are powerful and sufficient for audiences to take the characters, track their story, and also give them permission to feel things about the characters and what the characters experience and represent. But first, you have to practice some extremes. Practice bigger than performance so that when nerves kick in, you don't dip below the line where the jury is equipped to receive your message. If you don't practice bigger than is needed, then you won't be able to choose nuance when you need to. Instead, your body, your breath, your voice will betray you. You won't be nuanced and effective. You'll be small and uncontrolled, and your audience will be nervous for you. Practice extra big. Truth number 4 is that subtle is sufficient eventually. Do the big work so that your subtle shifts can be read, understood, and interpreted in the high stakes situation. So let's review. Truth number 1, your voice is an instrument. Truth number 2, external listening is better than internal hearing. And then from today, truth number 3, we learn best in low stakes situations. And truth number 4, subtle is sufficient eventually. Okay, now there is a 5th fundamental truth, but I'm going to save it for the next episode because it will introduce a topic that needs a little bit more time to explore. It's a big one that will potentially change your whole approach to courtroom communication. So be sure to come back to the Foster Fam next week. Until then, keep fostering your voice. Thanks for pulling up a seat with me today and for being part of the Foster Fam. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave a review or a comment so I can give you a shout out on a future episode. During the week, you can find me on Instagram at Foster Voice Studio, where I'm dropping little nuggets of vocal technique and leadership wisdom. You can also join my mailing list by visiting fostervoicestudio.com or by clicking the link in the show notes. I'll send a weekly vocal tip every Tuesday directly to your inbox. Until then, keep fostering your voice.